Hello, everybody. How you doing today? It's a new month and a new day. Just wanted to start out with that with a rhyme because I always do it on time. But this is nothing far from special because this is special, and I figured I talk about something that actually turns 45 years old this year. And on this date, particularly, it's kind of refreshing knowing that it did happen this time 45 years ago, and that is the 45th 45th anniversary of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And I have to say, it is gratifying that I just happen to have this special collector's edition of the film because if anyone has, well, I put it this way: if you're a person of my particular caliber in terms of generation, the age and all that other good stuff, then you know that, this film came out at a time when it was popular in terms of when Star Trek, other various films, I mean, no, that's Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek was Star Trek is a Star Trek. The thing is, another movie that had star in it was Star Wars. It pretty much was the catalyst and fuel that restarted all the science fiction, you know, back then. But I'll get into that. This film was released in uh, December the 7th, 1979. And it was a Paramount Pictures release, which was produced by the creator of the original show, Gene Roddenberry. And it was a story that was done by Alan Dean Foster with a screenplay by Harold Livingston. And as you know, the screenplay, not the screenplay, but the score was done by the masterful and incredible talented Jerry Goldsmith. I mean, if you've heard this score multiple times, then you recognize it from either from this movie or from when they did the Next Generation Star Trek. They always use that as the going theme for that, which makes sense because I mean, you need something to really get you going. So this film, in retrospective, is a very there's a lot of stories behind this film and a lot of layered things that make it what it is because this film came out at a time, as I said, and that's going to get the genesis of how this film even came to light. This film, going back to the late '60s, was when this show came out, the original TV show, and it was starting to get billed, but it was kind of lacking in viewership. And that happens. That tends to happen with things. There's nothing you can do about it. It ran for 3 seasons, and it was kind of hobbled at that time when it was on its original run on NBC. At least I think it was NBC. I think it was ABC. I have to look that up, but correct me if I'm wrong. No. The fact of the matter is that it limped during that time. But once it got canceled in '69, it's like, hey, fall back, fall back. It's just how it is. But it went into syndication sometime later. And in that time, it started to kind of rebuild, regenerate some interest in fans. I know with me, as a kid watching this and who had an imagination back in the '70s, I was just kind of like, wow, this is an interesting, great show. And you kind of think when you find out the basis of this show getting canceled at the time, it's like, why did this show get canceled? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But like anything, these things happen, you know, politics and poverty, whatever, come into play. So it generated a lot of fan base, and people started to take notice, and they say, hey, you know, this is a great show. You know, it'd be nice if we could have a. It'd be nice if they actually made a film of this, you know. And originally, you know, before the film, they were going to do a TV or a regenerated pilot of this film for television. And in the midst of this, they were actually going to do a what Paramount UPN would be in the future tense was going to be here in the 70s. But going ahead of time, they scrapped all that idea and they decided to just say, let's do a amped up version of this show and get it going. But, you know, again, it wasn't exactly something that they were so head over heels in doing until a little movie came out in 77 that would change all that. And the unusual suspect in this was George Lucas. And somehow he created a film that would change the tide of how films, at least ones that were so-called money makers, would change the course of history. And in that spot, it would definitely say, you know, why don't we do something our own? Or as the saying goes, studios say, let's start getting something that will actually doing something that will generate something of a buzz like this. True enough, you have your clones, but then there's others that say, hey, let's go ahead and do something like this, you know. So, in the midst of this, the people at Paramount said, you know what, we got Star Trek. Let's go ahead and get this sucker rolling, you know. And by and by, they went ahead and did this, and it's just like, wow, y'all really gonna put this into play with this, you know? I mean, because it seemed like y'all had the idea, but why didn't you just go ahead and do it beforehand, you know? But Star Wars was the catalyst, the fuel to amp up and getting things going. And sure enough, Star Trek, the motion picture, got rolling, and it started to become what would turn out to be the film that would come out to be later. Now, now the thing about this film is that, like a lot of films, especially back then, there was a lot of stretching and going and trying to get certain things rolling in making certain things happen. And if you know the story behind this, I won't go into great detail about this. I won't do all that. The simple fact is, this film had so much, you know, as far as some original, some original people who were doing the effects didn't really do a great job in the effects department, so they had to hire someone else to do it. And this is where you step in with Doug Trumbull, who would be on the course of this. But also, they would get, surprisingly, the supervisor who worked on the original Star Wars, John Dystra. And he was one of the supervisors too for this film. So, with that in mind, all those things, the concepts and everything, and one of the crazy things about this film is that this film had a lot of concepts that was being done and being shown and whatever. What you come to find out, along with getting people to be in the film and this and that, When all said and done, when they film whatever in film, and they in studios are this kind of thing where they say they want this thing in the pan in the baker, and come out and serve it to you on time in terms of when it's going to be shown. This film ended up like so many other films to this day unfinished. What you see in the original cut in 79 was not the finished film. And in time there would be, added on things, and eventually in 2001 the original director, Robert Wise, would actually put the finishing touches to this film and show what it was actually supposed to be in the original cut. So it's kind of funny that this film is infamous for what it is. I mean, it's not an action picture. It's more of a special effects, mystery extravaganza. That's all it is. It's nothing more, nothing less. But people can say, I can look at it now and say that this film is super boring. You know, it is so boring. And the funny thing is, this film would have died had it not been for the second Star Trek film, which was, of course, Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, which really cemented the saying, hey, this thing is just going to go away. This is going to still be here regardless. Okay. But with me, I love films. I mean, and when I first heard about this film back then as a child, I was kind of like, whoa, there's a Star Trek film that's actually going to come out. And like I said, I was watching, from my perspective, watching the television shows and, just loving it. And then when they say they were having a film come out, I was like, whoa. I mean, you got to remember, put yourself in a place where you're 9 years old, not even 10. It's still the 70s, and things were a little different back then. You know, things were coming out I mean, things. The end of the Vietnam War would happen. Various things and whatever. And then the oil prices was going up and down. It was a lot of chaos back then. Not to say that we don't have that now, but back in the 70s, it was there. And looking at something that's imaginative, you can understand why when I first saw this film in the theater, my mom took me, my brother that I take care of, and my nephew to go see this film. Okay, and it was on a cold. It was on a cold. It was a cold. I think it was a Friday. I think it was. I think we seen it. No, we did. No, yeah, we did see it the night it was released. We did see it that night. We did see it that night. So it was that Friday night, and and it was, as I say again, it was cold. And that's one thing about when you're a child, you can remember the cold. I know when I saw Superman, the original Dick Donner film, it was cold. So this film was no exception since it was released in the December month, and it was cold. Um, and now I think about it, no, I don't think it was Saturday. I don't think it was Friday. I think it was Saturday because we were still going to school this time. So, it was Saturday. I'm sorry, but anyway, I mean it's been 45 years, so I can't remember exactly what day that was. But um, a simple fact is, I was a child. I saw this as a child, and one of the things about the show, it was such a gratifying thing, is so cool things was going on that you saw and everything. This was the same with me when I saw this film. When you see the spectacle, the imagination of different things you see in this picture, it is so like I say wonderful. So it's like, oh wow, this is cool. This is this is that's what it is. And like I say, you're a child. You don't know any better. You not really looking, and that's the thing about it. You're not really looking at the story. You're not really looking at too much the characters. You know who the characters are. Kirk, Spock, Bones, Uhura. All them. But you don't really look at them. I mean, you do, but you don't look at the them as the thing. You looking at what's going on in the picture because it was spectacular for what it is. You get older, you get a little bit wiser, and you start to realize, like, in your teens or your adults, it's like this is very, very, yeah. As I said before, like, okay, that's, I guess, I mean, yeah, whatever, It's like, dude, this is no, this is what? This is like, say, what was I looking at when I was a kid? What was I looking at as a child? And it's so crazy knowing that looking back, I'm glad that cooked me for what I saw. But as an adult, you realize like to each their own what they like to see. And thankfully, as an adult, it still has a heart. It still has some way place in my heart that I like. But this film here, yeah, like I say, this film here, it's one of those films that it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. It's just going to. But anyway, um, for the genesis of what the story is in terms of the plot is so simple. It's so sympathetic. Or when I say it's so simplified that you realize that the reason why it is the way it is because they're doing it as it's almost like it's an homage to 20 2001 A Space Odyssey, which granted, if you get into it, you realize like that movie is more. It's to say it's more interesting than this film. Okay, depending on how you look at it, and looking at it, the whole concept of this film was whatever the big mystery thing is out there is coming back, and it's literally coming back to destroy us. And it's like, okay, that's great, but when you go involve yourself into making what it is, it's like you're just seeing, and that's the thing about this film. See, the whole concept of the film is that it's a not so much a big bad, but it's just a big mysterious entity coming back to Earth, and you don't know what its agenda is. We don't know what it's all about. So when we discover what this thing is, what it's all about, you're like, okay, I guess that works. I mean, I can kind of see that. Thing about it is like, why is this even a thing? And when we get to see and explore the whatever it is like, okay, we're actually taking 10 minutes just going through the cloud, the whatever, and I'm just like, this is what we're doing. Like I say, back then it was like I say cool because I'm like, you're a child, you're a 9 year old. It's just like, wow, that's a spectacle. That's like, whoa, that is amazing. And like I say, you're looking at it through child's eyes. Adult's eyes, it's like, okay, but where is the story going with this? And when you get to the plot, and like I say, I'm not going to worry about spoilers because the spoiler is that what it is a giant, pretty much probe that's like, basically, it's like the length of almost from Can't even say that. I mean, because it's big, but you know you can't. The thought of how big it is big. It's just big. It's almost like from the distance of it is from the Earth to the Sun. For what it's for what you gather is that's the size of it, and that's pretty big. Okay, but the end result is that the entity that is embedded in this thing, you come to find out that it's called V'ger, but it's only a shortened version of Voyager. And somehow the satellites that were sent out during the time, which is real, but this is a Voyager 6 version, you know. It was sent out, to find, different life forms and such, whatever. But it comes back and somehow it becomes a sentient being for whatever reason. And it's trying to send back all the information that's collected through the years, which is over 300 years. And the fact that it's back is really, it's like, oh, I want to share this, but it can't share anything because it's looking for its creator. It's almost like it's saying, I'm looking for God. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for what that the creator is. So the notion is, I mean, that's an interesting notion, but the execution of explaining this almost seems like it's, I mean, I think it could do. I think the reason why I mentioned earlier that this movie wasn't officially finished is probably the reason why it didn't, carry out what it was supposed to do. So the end result is that it sends its information back, but only with the sacrifice of one of the crew, and one of the crew's name was Decker, you know, and he literally has to touch the machine in order to do this, which is what Vija wanted. It wanted to actually touch human and somehow, in a way, evolved. You know, it had to just like come something different. And like I say, when you see how it changes from whatever it was before, machine wise, to something that whatever in touch with human, and it's like it blows your mind. But again, as I said before, you don't know what, you don't realize why this happens, And then, like I say, it's kind of like I say, if you don't have a strong imagination, you're not really going to get into it. You're not. But that's how things are with some things. You have to really let yourself let the saying goes, your suspicion of disbelief play into that, and that's why I feel like it's just what you should do here. But the bottom line is that, like I say, the film, I feel it does a good job in what it's trying to do, but I think the execution of it, because it was, as I say, it's slow motion in doing this, As I said before, 2001 does a little better job at this. Stanley Cooper did. And the funny thing is, Robert Wise, who directed this is not his first rodeo into science fiction. The man had done I mean, he done The Day the Earth Stood Still many years before that. So it's like I'm familiar with science fiction. I'm pretty good at it. I guess it was just that this was a bigger fish to fry, and it, I mean, it just happened. It just happened what it is. So, but like I say, when I went to go see it, when my mom took me and my brothers and my siblings to go see this, like I say, it was just an exhilarating thing, and we just loved watching it. But 45 years later, can I say it still holds up? Um, I guess it depends on who you ask. Am I going to say that, you know, whoever watches it, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's all right. But to whoever who watches it, it's up to them what they feel, what they've taken to it, because I mean, it's a pretty decent film. I mean, it's pretty good. It just, I feel like it's not. Look, it's not as. Let's face it. It's not as good as any of the films that came after it. It's not. It's not as good as Star Trek Two. Definitely not as good as Star Trek Three. Definitely not as good as Star Trek Four. Although it might be up there. Although I can say now, no, it's not as good as Star Trek Five, and Star Trek Five is not as good as the other three I mentioned, and it's definitely not as good as Star Trek Six. And this is with the original cast. Okay, so surprisingly, this one bad apple did not stop these other films from coming into existence, and I feel like that is a great thing, knowing that it did not stop the ball rolling with all these other films. And thankfully, maybe I feel like this is a good thing that these films did get made. This film did become into existence, because otherwise the other five would never existed. So you can't say that this film, it had not been made, then you wouldn't have the rest of the ones that I mentioned. And I feel that that's what it boils down to. You have the films, and you have to have a film that really starts. I mean, it's true. And the funny thing is, this film did make some money. It did make money, but like I say, it wasn't the gold mine that people thought it was going to be. And I think now, looking back at this film, it's never going to be what it is. But I feel that in retrospect, it did what it had to do. It did what it had to be, and the people behind it, even though it didn't become iconic for the right reasons. It did become what it is to spark a new generation of different films, and it did that because most of the films were in the 80s, and eventually we get into the 90s and so on. And like I say, it sparked, and not just that, but it sparked a new television series. I mean, and even after that, it sparked even other shows and various iterations of Star Trek. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, the original series did this, but this film really catalyzed in making these films work. I feel, and I feel that's why it's still here now. And like I say, in the 45 years since this film, I feel that it will always stand the test of time in the best way that it is. That it wasn't that great, but then again, it wasn't disappointing in giving us what we have future wise with Star Trek. And this is why, and I was explaining this recently on the Metal Tavern with DJ Danubis, that, talking about Jet Jaguar, which is featured here, right here. um, it's never going to go away. You know, it's that it was made, it was created, and it didn't. It had a reason for being in existence. I feel, and maybe that's the whole purpose of what something that you create. It's showing that even though this film might have been a dud when it came out and what it became, it didn't mean that it was not going to be forever. You know what it is, and it's truthfully what it has become, and in a way, it is iconic for what it is. You know, but that being said, I feel that this film is what it is, and you can't take that away. I mean, even though it was released unfinished, even though it was done in a hefty pace, the film is what it is, and to this day, it's still here. It hasn't gone away, and I think that's pretty much what you can look at when you look at a something that's been made. It's never going to change. It's always going to be there. So, but that's my take on the retrospect of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and how in the 45 years since its release, hey, it's going to be here. It's not going to go away, as I said before. It's going to stay where it is. But that's all I have to say about that. And hopefully enjoy watching this. I mean, like I say, 45 years. I know the next 45 years it'll be, geez, next 45 years. I don't think I'll be alive. Well, I know it'll be 90 for sure. That's the thing about it. It'll definitely be that. Um, but no, this film is a great example of this, the standing of what makes a film what it is, and like any thing that's been made, never goes away. So, but that being said, I'm gonna let you go, and y'all have a great day, and let this month be not a burden to you, but a blessing. And as I always say, in closing, y'all take care. I'm gonna say this: be blessed this time, and even though this is dealing with something different on the kaiju side, I'm gonna keep on saying keep the kaiju love alive, but also keep the sci-fi involvement alive.